Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, we are going to be talking about how to use the midpoint formula. So, let's get into it. All right, so the midpoint formula goes like this. If we are trying to find the midpoint of 2 points, x1, y1, this representing the first point, x2, y2, this is representing the second point, then the midpoint is basically for the new x coordinate. The x coordinate of our midpoint is the average of the x values. So it's x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And the second one for the y coordinate is y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So by plugging in the numbers to these formulas, we can find the midpoint of any 2 points we want. So for example, this first example says, what is the midpoint of 3 comma 8 and 5 comma negative 4? Okay, so first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to label my x1 and my x2. Okay, so here's my x1 and my y1, so because this is going to be point number 1, and then I'm going to label this one as x2 and y2. Okay, now it doesn't matter which point you label as point 1 and which one you do as point 2, but it's important that we keep the same point together. So 3 and 8, either they're both 1s or they're both 2s because they're both in the same point. And same with 5 and negative 4, either they're both 1 or they're both 2. So you could label them differently from me and still get the correct answer as long as you stay consistent and have the same point, the same number matching up with the same point. Okay, so let's go ahead and figure it out. Going back to the formula for a second, it's x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So, well, x1 is 3, so that's going to be 3. x2 is 5, so plus 5, divided by 2, comma. Y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Well, y1 is 8, so 8 plus negative 4 divided by 2. And now I'm going to simplify this a bit better. So 3 plus 5 is 8. So that's going to be 8 over 2, comma, and then 8 minus 4 over 2. Because recall that when we have 8 plus negative 4, the plus negative really just means subtract 4. So 8 subtract 4 is 4. So we're going to get 4 over 2. Now 8 divided by 2 is 4. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So therefore, 4, 2 is the midpoint. And so this is our final answer right over here for what is the midpoint. It's this one here. It's 4 comma 2. Let's do one more example that's like this. And then I'm going to do a third example that's slightly different. This next example says, what is the midpoint of negative 2, negative 3, and negative 4, 11? So first I'm going to label my points. I'm just going to arbitrarily choose the first one to be point 1. So this is x1 and y1, and this is x2 and y2, like that. Okay. So now we know that in order to find the midpoint, we have to find the average. So x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, so let's plug in our numbers next. What is x1? x1 is negative 2. x2 is negative 4. So negative 2 plus negative 4 divided by 2. And then what about y1 and y2? Well, y1 is negative 3 plus y2 is 11 divided by 2. And now I'm going to simplify. So here we have negative 2 plus negative 4, right? Recall that when we have plus negative, that's the same as subtracting. So negative 2 minus yet another 4 is going to get us negative 6. So this one's negative 6 over 2. And then the other one is negative 3 plus 11, right? Which that's the same as 11 minus 3, right? 11 minus 3 is 8. So 8 over 2. So therefore, our answer is going to be negative 3 over 4, right? Because negative 6 over 2 is negative 3, and positive 8 over 2 is positive 4. So negative 3 comma 4 is our answer. All right, so this third one I'm going to give it's kind of a different example than the previous ones. It says the midpoint between 1, 5 and x2, y2 is 10 comma 3. Find x2, y2. So let's say you're given one of the endpoints and you're given the midpoint. How do we find the other endpoint? So for this one, what we have to do is we have to say, well, we know that the x coordinate of the midpoint is going to be 10 because they told us, right? They told us that the midpoint between these 2 points here, the one that we don't know and the one that we do know, is 10, 3. So that means x1 plus x2 divided by 2 is equal to 10, right? Because the average of those two must be 10. And we also know that y1 plus y2 divided by 2 must equal to 3, right? Because they told us the x coordinate of our midpoint is 10 and the y coordinate is 3. They also told us x1 and y1, right? They gave us one of the points. And so I'm going to actually erase this and plug that in. So x1, they told us it was 1. And y1, they told us it was 5. And we're trying to find x2, y2. So all we need to do to find those is to simplify these equations. So let's do that. If we multiply 2 to both sides for this first one, we're going to get 1 plus x2 equals to 20. If we subtract 1, we get x2 is equal to 19. So there we go. x2 is 19. And then for y2, if we multiply both sides by 2, we get 5 plus y2 is equal to 6. And then if we subtract 5 from both sides, we get y2 equals 1. So therefore, the other point is going to be the x2, y2 point is 19, comma 1. Okay? So oftentimes we will get asked to find the midpoint, but other times we might be asked to find the other endpoint when we're given the first endpoint and the midpoint. And this is how we would do that. So slightly different, but essentially using that same formula we used previously. All right, well, great work today, everyone, and I will see you next day. Bye, everyone.